This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com, and today I have a man that a lot of WCW fans are going to remember, Jimmy Golden, aka none other than Bunkhouse Buck, former WCW Tag Team Champion. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good up here in New York. My good friend here, Nick's had me come up, talk to you people and him and on his podcast thing, and we're having a lot of fun.
Where are you living these days?
In eastern Tennessee, right outside of Knoxville. I'm a hillbilly. I look like a hillbilly, so I got to come from the hills.
And your father was actually a wrestler, right? So you grew up in the wrestling business.
Yeah. My dad wrestled had a few matches. He mostly he started out refereeing, had a few matches, and then he got into the promotion end of it. So it's kind of been a family affair. My grandfather wrestled Roy Welch. You probably heard of him, Roy Welch, and Nick Goulas.
Oh yeah, the legendary promoter, and he also trained some people too, I believe.
Roy,
or was it Herb that did the?
Herb trained some guys too. Roy didn't train a whole lot, I don't guess, but Herb did. And Lester. Now I don't know if Lester trained very many guys, but Herb did quite a few. They're around Dyersburg. That's where I was born, and a lot of the guys, they used to have a booking office in Dyersburg, and a lot of the guys came through there.
Now, growing up in the wrestling business, did they kayfabe you as a kid as to what was going on? Because I know that territory was a pretty hardcore territory as far as doing the stuff hard way and realism.
Yeah, they kayfabed me. My grandfather did, and uncles and most of the guys would kayfabe me for a long time. It was probably after I was about 15, 16, I went to live with my dad in Louisiana, and that's where I really got smartened up to the business.
How was the business itself when you were growing up? Was it pretty steady? Were you living a pretty good life, or was it up and down depending on what kind of roster there was?
Well, when I was a kid, the business was good. My mom and dad got a divorce when I was a young man, and we went to live in Yorkville, Tennessee, where Grandpa Roy had a farm and lived with him. So I ended up going to Memphis a lot with him to watch a lot of the old time greats, man. We were just talking about that earlier. The old Ellis Auditorium in Memphis, I saw, Buddy Fuller and all of the Welch boys and the Fields boys. And then, of course, they were all family. But then the medics, who was the original medics, was Pierre DeGlane and Tony Gonzalez. They were outstanding. They sold out that Ellis Auditorium 13 weeks in a row. They beat the Fullers. They beat the Welches and the Field boys. Nobody could beat them because they had that medic white outfit, and they were both the same size, looked alike, and they were great at pulling that switch. So nobody could beat them. And then, of course, I've watched the Von Brauners and the interns and you name it, man. There was hundreds of guys that come through there was older than me, because I was just a kid watching them, and those guys back in those days, they knew how to put their tights on.
Now, were you a fan of the heels growing up because you were mostly a heel in your career, or did you like the baby faces as well?
I always knew that there was something about the heels that I liked, because they were so, like the medics were so good at pulling that switch. And of course, I was into the baby faces too, because I had family, Buddy Fuller and the Fields boys and Herb, that I was a big fan of theirs because they were family. And not only that, but they were very good in the ring. Not because they was just family, but they knew what they were doing, and they were very exciting to watch. So I always enjoyed getting to go when I was a kid.
Did you play any sports before you got into professional wrestling?
I did. I played some basketball. Basketball was my game. Um, I enjoyed it the best. Never did play any football, but basketball and baseball, was playing baseball for kids there in the country in West Tennessee at that particular time. I had friends I'd go to their house. We were always going outside. We didn't have any games to play inside, these video games and stuff. You had to go outside to do something. So it was either baseball or basketball. And I loved all of those.
Now, what made you decide to get into the wrestling business? Was it just something you always wanted to do growing up around it, or were you kind of encouraged to get into it through your family?
I was kind of encouraged by my dad, and plus I wanted to test it out, see if I could do it. I was always a fan of the family members wrestling and watching them, and felt like that I could probably do it. And my dad pushed me. I ended up actually going up to Tennessee from Louisiana, and I was about 19 years old. I went up there and refereed matches, and then every once in a while I'd get to wrestle. So it was a great learning place. Stayed up there a few months and then went back to Louisiana and eventually into Alabama, Montgomery. That's where it all got started in 1970.
Now, did they still rough you up when you were training, or because you were involved in it through your family, did they go a little easier on you? Because I know in those days, particularly the Welches were known for having some pretty tough training.
Yeah. When we lived with Grandpa Roy there in Yorkville, Tennessee, every time he'd come home on the weekends. I usually got stretched. I was telling some of these guys about that. No blood was ever drawn, but I was always end up screaming for bloody murder to turn me loose. It was kind of like the Hart dungeon. But we didn't have no dungeon. It's just wherever he caught you, living room floor, kitchen floor, wherever it was at. I got stretched.
Now, as far as your first territory as a wrestler, where would that have been?
My first match that I ever had was in Morgan City, Louisiana with Pancho Villa. And I was scared to death. I was so nervous. I was blowed up before I ever got in the ring. I know I had a wrist lock on Pancho, and I looked down at him, and he was begging me to loosen up.
And I understand you also went to wrestle for Jim Barnett in Australia.
Yes. Went down to Florida, first of all, that year 1972. Went down to Florida for Eddie Graham. Buddy Fuller was down there with him at the time. And then Buddy and Eddie ended up buying half of the territory in Australia with Jim. And they asked me to go. So I went over and stayed 2 months. Loved every minute of it. It's a great place. And then Jim asked me to go to Hong Kong for a week. He was short a man up there, and he said, I'd like for you to go. And so I couldn't hardly turn that down, even though I was really homesick. I figured, it's a chance to see Hong Kong. I better take it. So I went.
And what was that experience like? I understand wrestling was very popular over there around that time.
It was. In Australia, when I got there, Mark Lewin was there, King Curtis, Brute Bernard, Gary Hart, a lot of those guys that were there and had been there for a while. And they had things going there for a long time, rocking and rolling. And but Jim wanted to sell some of it and get out a little bit. And so they went over and gave it a whirl. It didn't last. They ended up leaving, but I enjoyed my time and stay there.
Do you have a Jim Barnett impression by any chance?
Oh God, my champions! my superstars. I can see nothing but money. My champions. And then he'd tell Lonnie, just bring the money home, Lonnie, when you get through. I'm going home.
Now, I interviewed Robert Fuller, and he was telling me the importance of servicing the females back in those days as a baby face. You were mostly a heel. Did you have to do much of that, or were you more just going in there and doing your job and going home?
Well, I've always enjoyed, meeting the lady fans too. I dated a bunch of the girls because I was a single man till I was 30 years old. Before I got married, I fooled around and fell in love.
I see. And as far as working for the Fullers, when you actually ended up being brought into the stud stable, uh, could you share some of your memories of that? Because that's one of your most memorable runs, of course.
Yeah, I turned heel first before Robert did, and he didn't think it was a good idea for me to be a heel. I always thought that I would make a good heel, and then he decided he wanted to try it too, and we ended up putting together the stud stable and had Dutch Mantell. Brian Lee was with us there for a while. Sid Vicious, different ones from the stud stable, and got fond members of the stud stable. We did good business with the stud stable. And, so whatever works, we're happy with that because it's all about wrestling business has been about a lot of things. The main thing it's been about is money.
Yeah, definitely. You want to make the most money. Do you have any memories of Sid you could share with us? I've always had good experiences with him, but uh, depending on who it is, they have all different experiences.
Yeah, Sid, he was trying hard. Uh, he had some learning to do, but he sure had good potential. He was a huge man, had a great looking body. The thing that you got to get with that is learning how to work. And he went out to Texas with us there for a couple of shows in Dallas, and one match he had with Von Erich, with Kerry Von Erich, and they had a good match, man. They fought their ass off all up out of the ring, out on the floor, and outside the building. And I told him after that show, I said that match was a town builder. It was just one that clicked for him. So, and then Sid went on to do pretty good.
Yeah, he made a lot of money and he saved his money, from what I understand. Any thoughts on Colonel Robert Parker, Robert Fuller as a manager? He was such a character.
Yes, well, Robert, he did a good job as Colonel Parker, and of course, he had some good talent, some good boys that he was managing. Steve Austin, Stone Cold was there with him for a while, and myself and Slater, Terry Funk. He had some good boys that he managed, and he did a good job at being the manager of Colonel Parker. And again, he was happy with what he was doing.
And you mentioned Dallas. Were you in Dallas working for Fritz, or were you there for Jerry Jarrett in later years?
Jared, we went for Jared.
Okay, so I guess that would have just been the last days of the Von Erichs when you were there. They would have just been getting out.
Yes, yeah, I think they was just finishing up. I don't know what happened to the territory after that. Jared was trying to run it, and I ended up leaving for too much longer after that. Went back to East Tennessee to Knoxville, and it kind of folded up from there.
Yeah. What was your experience like? You mentioned Kerry Von Erich was still alive for a bit of that. Kevin was alive. Were they easy to work with, or were their reputations true that they were a little out of it?
Yeah, a little bit dangerous. Kerry, he'd give you that roundhouse punch, man. He'd knock my brains out with that punch. And then, he had his foot. He was missing a foot there, and he kicked me right between the legs one time with that foot in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and I went down. He was screaming, get up so I can hit you again, but I wasn't getting up. It's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they also traveled into the other territories as well and worked with you.
Yeah, they came into Tennessee and worked several times. Kerry did, and the other one too, some.
Did you know Steve Austin at all when you were doing the Dallas territory? Because that seems to be around the time he was there.
No,
No.
I didn't meet Steve until we went to Atlanta, WCW.
Now you also feuded with a guy that we lost this past year, unfortunately, Tracy Smothers. Any memories of him?
Yeah, Tracy was a good boy. He wrestled with the Armstrongs, him and Steve Armstrong. We had a lot of matches with me and Robert, the stud stable, against Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers. I like Tracy. Tracy was a good boy. I spent 12 days with him in Diego Garcia. It's a little tiny island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's owned by the British. It's all military. So we went over there for the military. And I had some matches with Tracy over there. Ended up rooming with him for 12 days over there. And Tracy is a good boy. Sad that Tracy left us.
Yeah, and he had quite a battle at the end there too. You also worked with Tommy Wildfire Rich, former world champion. What was he like to be in the ring with?
Tommy was good. Tommy was a good boy. He's a good worker. He worked hard. Had him and Johnny Rich together. Johnny Rich was from Montgomery, Alabama, and him and Tommy made a good team. Tommy Wildfire Rich, the boy had a lot of fire. He was a good worker.
How did you find working with Austin Idol?
Good. Austin Idol, he used to scream at me all the time, the wig, the wig, the wig. And I asked the referee, Jimmy McGuire, I said, what is he saying? The wig, the wig. He said, his hair, you're pulling his hair out. And I said, oh, that's what he means by the wig. And he'd tater me in the jaw. So I'd scream the jaw and he'd scream the wig, and it was back and forth. But did good, made some money with Austin Idol. Austin Idol was in Australia with us in 72. He's first getting into business. He came over there. They put me and Idol together and put the Australian tag team belts on us. We were working with two guys called Dick Dunn and Don Carson. You remember them?
I know Don Carson, the name, but I haven't heard of Dick Dunn.
Dick Dunn was from down around Opp, Alabama, or Defuniak Springs, right in there. He was a Southern boy from a heck of a worker. Him and Don both, and they didn't like working with Austin Idol. He was Iron Mike McCord at the time, and he's tatering them, man. He's hurting them. They'd run from him. They'd give me all the spots.
That's hilarious. You also worked for Joe Blanchard's Southwest Championship Wrestling in Texas. How did you find working for that territory?
I only stayed 2 or 3 weeks, and I thought it was okay. It was all right. They wanted me to come back, but I didn't go back. I was spoiled. I had a little money at the time, and decided to take several months off. We'd worked an angle in Alabama where I was hurt, so I left the territory and went out there and worked in San Antonio for Tully, and made that trip to Odessa, and it was a great territory. at one time. And guys did good there, but I couldn't get my heart into it. I didn't want to go back. They wanted me to come back, but I didn't go.
Would you ever have imagined back then that there would eventually be no territories?
No, no. I never thought it would come to what it has today. No territories. So Vince put us all out of business.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but he's making huge money, I guess. So you wrestled for Smoky Mountain Wrestling right when it started in 1991. The Jim Cornette ran. How was your experience there?
It was pretty good. We had Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson to work with a lot. We had some fantastic matches with them. How could you not? And then Jim had his boys there, Stan Lane and Pritchard and the Heavenly Bodies. So he had like a 3-way deal, 3 different tag teams there that was fighting for the belts. And so it worked out pretty good for Jim. It lasted longer than I thought it would before it folded up.
He had somebody else's money backing it, right? Some concert or something.
Yeah. Somebody was backing him up, and the money ran out, or they got tired of losing money, I guess. And that was the end of Smoky Mountain.
Did you move your family up there when you were in that territory, or were you just commuting from wherever you lived?
No, we were already living there.
Okay.
We moved to Knoxville in late 80s, 89 and 90. And I've been there ever since.
Oh, you're still in Knoxville, as you mentioned. There is still Tom Pritchard has a wrestling school there with Kane, and Kane is the mayor. What do you think about Kane being the mayor there?
They voted him right in. He's done a heck of a job at getting there, and he seems to be doing well with it. And I think it's that's what he wants to do. That's what he's enjoying to do, is being in politics.
Chris Norman, a fan, wants to know how it was working with Pork Chop Cash.
Good. Pork Chop was a good man. I liked Pork Chop, and he'd bust his ass and do about anything you wanted to do. So Pork Chop was a good man.
After Smoky Mountain, you ended up going over to World Championship Wrestling. Who was it that got you into that company?
Robert Fuller, my cousin. He went down there with Sid Vicious, managing Sid. And when he went, he told me, he said, if I can get you a spot in there, boy, I'll get you in. I said, that'd be great. So he was down there a year or so. And I come home one night, and there was a message on the machine. He said, got something for you, boy. Give me a call. When I did, he told me, he described this bunkhouse. He said, we're looking for a guy that can have a bunkhouse match with Dustin in Chicago. And we want a bunkhouse buck type guy, hillbilly, cowboy, farmer type guy. And I said, I'm your man.
So what did you think about, as a wrestler, sometimes it's annoying putting on boots and putting on the tights and getting all pumped up. You got to wear basically clothes in the ring. So I'm sure you must have liked that.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about laying in the sun anymore, getting a suntan, or hanging in the gym every day, trying to look fantastic. Because bunkhouse, I had all the stuff on all the time, so made it easier for me.
Who were the main bookers there at that time? Would that have been Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan?
When I first went down there was Mike Graham, Bill let's see, I believe Bill Dundee was involved in that. Gagne, Greg Gagne, Mike Graham, I mentioned him. Robert was helping them some at that time. Who else? There was 4 or 5 of those boys that were in there doing that booking thing, and that's how I got the thing. And they started asking me, who can we get to be this bunkhouse buck? And Robert said, well, I know somebody'd love to have it. And they said, well, who's that? He said, well, Jimmy, my cousin, Jimmy Golden, he's up there in Knoxville. He's looking for work. And they said, oh, Jimmy, what's he doing? Yeah, call him. So that's where we got started with Bunkhouse.
Any memories of your feud with Dustin that you could share with us?
Oh, yeah. Dustin was great. When we first worked at the angle on at Center Stage, the TV, kept telling me, he said, this has got to look good. This needs to look good. I kept telling him, I'm going to hit him with a trophy. I said, it's going to look good. I'm going to give it to you about 3 times. Then I'm going to start to work with you again. Of course, it'll be your turn one day to get me good. Oh, but Dustin, what a man. Took it like a man. I knocked the hell out of him with that trophy. But he got over it. And that's just what it needed.
How was the pay in those days for WCW? Would that have been one of your best runs for pay?
Yes. Yeah. That was probably one of my best runs. You know, they ended up putting the belts on me and Slater, and had Terry Funk for a while. That was a lot of fun. Was on the road a lot, but like I said, the business has been about a lot of things. Mostly been about money, and money was good. Because I've always enjoyed being in the business. It's always been exciting for me, and it beats working.
Yeah, it's better than a normal job, that's for sure. Now, teaming with Dick Slater, I guess after the Dustin feud, they just wanted to transition you into a tag team.
Yeah, Slater was looking for work, and they wanted him to come in and be a partner. They wanted Funk. Ric Flair was in there in the booking office there after a while. Some of those Mike and Gagne was eased out, and Ric Flair came in and he started doing the book. And Rick really liked the idea of Terry Funk and Bunkhouse Buck. It just kind of went together. And so we worked it for a while, and then I think Terry had some heat with the office there for some reason. I don't know what, but he didn't stay very long, and then Slater stepped in.
Do you have any stories about Terry Funk you could share with us? I know you knew him other than just WCW. You knew him from the territories as well.
Yeah, he was. Him and Dory was in Japan with us in '71. I was 21 years old. I'd been in the business right at 2 years, and I'd heard a lot of stories about Japan. So I asked Nick Goulas to get me and Sam Bass in Japan. Next thing I knew, we was on a plane headed for LA. Worked a week out there and went on over to Japan. Funk Terry was with us. He pulled a good one over there when we stopped. We flew to Sapporo, Japan from Tokyo, and we got there to claim our bags at the baggage claim. He went outside where they were loading the bags, and he talked those boys into letting him get on the conveyor belt that came around. All the bags started come rolling through, and here comes Funk with the bags. He laying down with his cowboy hat on his head. He's a character. Terry Funk, man. He was always pulling something. Terry Funk. He was always pulling.
Now, for Dick Slater, he's known as one of the toughest wrestlers ever. Did you ever see him in action over the years in any of his bar fights or anything?
No, but I can tell you a story about Dick that when we were in Knoxville, some of the boys split off from my cousin Ron Fuller and ran opposition against him. Bob Orton Jr., Bob Roop, Ronnie Garvin, Boris Malenko, Ron Wright, a bunch of the guys, they went to run in opposition. and there was a lot of challenges made. Roop and Orton then was challenging Robert and Ron and different guys to a shoot. And so they came to the matches at the Coliseum that to our show, and I was working with Dick Slater. I had a match with Slater. I'd turned me heel, and Dick had me in a headlock, and Roop and Orton was sitting over there ringside seat, and they kept acting like they was going to come in the ring. Well, Slater started cussing them, calling them everything in the book, and telling them, "Come on in here." So I'm going, "Dickie, damn, what's going on here, man? What are you doing?" And I said, I'm thinking to myself that, boy, if these guys, Orton and Root, come in here, this is going to be an all-out shoot. I'm going to be right in the middle of it. Well, they never came, so we finished the match. The match is over with. Dick slid right out of the ring and went right to him, right in their face. And when he did, the crowd swamped him. And, of course, I could see what Dick was giving them hell. And according to the fans, what they were saying, that Dick told them everything in the book and dared either one of them to stand up. Nobody stood up.
And at one point, I think Kevin Sullivan told me, didn't Dick actually knock out Bob Roode? I don't know if it was before or after that, but it happened in some territory.
Well, the story I heard was in Florida, in Jacksonville. I think Slater and Norton had a match, and this is what I heard, that they come back to the dressing room, and Orton said to him, "You know, you didn't sell my elbow. What? Something about his elbow. Slater didn't sell it just right for him, or something." And a couple of words was said, and Slater knocked him down 2 or 3 times. That's the end of that.
Now, there's a fan on here. I'm sure you've heard of. We'll get Nick. I'll let Nick get you a beer there.
Who?
Do you want to tell Nick to get you another beer there? I don't know.
Yeah, he's bartender. He's waiting on me. He's a good boy. I got a tip for him.
Now, I'm sure you've heard of the Dirt Sheet, the Wrestling Observer. There's a fan on here that says when you and Dick were tag team champions, apparently you were voted the 95 worst tag team of the year by that Dirt Sheet. Did you hear about that? The fan wants to know.
No, I didn't. This is the first time. So we was the worst tag team in 95?
According to the Wrestling Observer, you won the award for that. But
okay. Is that about the time we won the tag team belt?
Yeah, okay. That's what the fan is saying.
We didn't deserve the belts.
Well, I guess you had heat even with the Dirt Sheet writers, but I was a fan back then. I was just a kid, and I was a big fan of you guys. There's another fan question. Chris wants to know if you thought Arn Anderson would go as far as he did when you knew him in Southeastern.
Yes. I figured Arn is going to go a long ways. Like I was telling these guys earlier, there's, you know, Arn Anderson, Ricky Gibson, Jerry Lawler, Dick Slater, those guys are born to be a wrestler.
Now, how was the backstage environment in WCW? It seems like you wouldn't be one that would have a lot of clique issues or political issues backstage. Was it pretty smooth for you backstage?
At WCW?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty smooth. Yeah, everything was fairly, you know, was professional most of the time. You had guys in there that knew what to do, took their orders, and did it the best way they could.
What did you think about Eric Bischoff when he started moving things along with Nitro and everything? Because you were there, I guess, right when WCW exploded.
I know that Eric, you know, he had a heck of a business in front of him with a lot of good boys. you had some of the bookers that I was naming in the beginning. Vern Gagne's son, Greg Gagne, Mike Graham, Robert Fuller. You know, he had some of the best minds that you could get, been in business all their life. If somebody, you know, if you wanted somebody that knew the business, well, that'd be it. He ended up firing Gagne, and I think he ended up letting Mike Graham go too. I never did understand that.
How did you get along with Kevin Sullivan?
Good. I've known Kevin for a long time, since the early 70s in Florida. Kevin was there, and got along good with Kevin.
Yeah, he's how was he as a booker in Florida to deal with?
He was okay. He was okay because he did end up with the booking job there too at the end. So you know, Kevin was doing all he could do to make it go.
Matt R would like to know how was working with Harlem Heat.
Harlem Heat was okay. They was somewhat green still at that time. They were still learning some things, but they had great potential. You know, great looking bodies, big guys, and they was going to go somewhere in the end. You could tell that. They just needed a little more time to get that experience.
Anarchy wants to know if Dusty Rhodes had much to do with the creation of your character, because it seems like something he would have come up with.
I don't know if Dusty had anything to do with it or not. His son that I did that first angle with, and of course Dusty got involved later on when Ming was our manager, and he got involved. Dusty came into the program, so it might have been Dusty to come up with that idea. I'm not sure. I just know that Robert had called me and told me we need a guy that looks like this for this and that, and I got chosen.
And that was really cool when they had Ming as the bodyguard, and he would wear the ponytail and everything. Do you have any stories about him? Because he's thought of as the toughest wrestler to ever live.
Well, I'd say that's probably true. Ming's got a lot of experience in karate, I guess, and wrestling and fighting, period. From what I understand, he was a personal bodyguard for the Emperor of Japan at one time. So, you know, you got to be pretty impressive to have that job. And I knew that I wasn't going to give him any trouble, that's for sure. And it was always nice to know that he was behind my back when we was going to the ring. If something broke out, I got Ming on my side.
Yeah, that would definitely give you a sense of security. Did you ever go out to the bars or anything with Ming? I know in WCW he was starting to wind down his partying days.
No, but Robert did, and he told me a story about Ming. It got into an argument with somebody at a bar, I think around Charlotte at one time, and they were asked to leave. And they left walking back to the motel, and Robert said about 6 squad cars came up on him behind them and got out and surrounded them. And they was going to arrest Ming and handcuff him. They did arrest him, but they wanted to handcuff him, and he wasn't going to go for the handcuffs, and there was going to be trouble. And I'd say Ming was probably going to hurt some police officers before it was all said and done. And then they would end up hurting him too, maybe shooting him. So Robert Fuller talked him out of it. He told him, if you let me, I'll make sure that he goes down there with you to the jailhouse if you won't put the handcuffs on him. So they agreed not to put the handcuffs on him, and they all went down to the house where they're supposed to, and got things worked out.
Now, you mentioned you felt comfortable having Ming behind you in case anything happened with fan attacks or the crowd went a little nuts. Did you ever have any fan attack experiences in your career?
Where the fans attacked us?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started, I was refereeing, and I was sent in on a match where the other referee was knocked down. And when I got there, the heels had the baby faces covered, and my job was to count the baby faces. I was in Birmingham, Alabama, Don and Al Green, and Betty, they was pissed at me for sure. And they surrounded the ring. The fans did. They came right up to the edge of the ring and wouldn't let us out of the ring. So the police come to the ring and was trying to get them back. And Don looked at me. He said, "I'm going to go first, and you come in behind me, and Al's going to get behind you. And once we start, we're not going to let anybody stop us." But we had a hell of a time getting to that door, but we made it.
Did you ever witness any behind the scenes fights in your career? I know they rarely happen, but they happen here and there between wrestlers.
I did. I was at center stage the night that Paul Orndorff and Van Vader hooked up. I didn't see it all, but I saw where they started arguing, cussing each other, and it ended up down the hallway from where I was dressing. But it sounded pretty rough back here, man. It was wild and woolly. Vader and Orndorff, they went at it for a while.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think Vader really ever recovered mentally from that.
Probably not. He got his mouth busted a little bit there. So I don't know. I know Orndorff's a pretty rough character.
Another fan wants to know: is there any ribs that you either played or have had played on you that you could share with us?
Let's see. That'll take some thinking. I've had a lot of ribs pulled on me. But coming up with a good one is a little bit rough.
Yeah, I know that Ron Fuller, when I interviewed him, he was saying that his father would play some real nasty ribs, like sewing rattlesnakes' mouth shut and leaving it in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Him and Grandpa Roy both was good about putting a snake on you, a dead snake or a spider or something like that. If they knew you was afraid of it, they'd drive you crazy with it. Like Bob Armstrong, he couldn't stand the thought of a snake being on him. So a lot of guys, ribbed him about the snakes, done with rubber snakes and stuff. But Herb Welch, my great uncle, he was good at ribs. He was always pulling something.
Now, as far as you leaving WCW, was that just a 3-year contract and it ran out, or you had enough wrestling, or what was the deal there?
Yeah, the contract ran out, and I finally eased out.
Is there any reason why you never worked for Carlos Colon in Puerto Rico?
No. I had thought about going to Puerto Rico several times. It just never come about. Dutch Mantell was down there booking for a while, and knew a lot of guys that went to Puerto Rico. I just never made it. It seemed like something else was always going on.
Now, this is a weird question. A fan wants to know who was the smelliest wrestler you were ever in the ring with.
they probably go say it was me. I was Mean Gene used to say that I was the smelliest guy in WCW, and that's the character that I portrayed. I was a stinker, man. Oh, but there was some other guys that the Assassin A few of the boys that worked medics as the medics with those outfits that they never took it out of their bag. They'd sweat in it the night before and never washed it. Man, they put that on and get you in a headlock. The sweat smell was strong, buddy.
Yeah, I can imagine. You appeared in WWE as Jack Swagger's father, and I guess your last most memorable wrestling television appearance. How did that whole situation come about?
Michael Hayes. I knew Michael Hayes when he first got in the business. Him and Terry Gordy and the other boy. And I saw Michael. He was already up at WWE. He was a booker, a road agent up there. I saw him at the Gulf Coast Wrestling Reunion in Mobile, like 6 months or so before that deal. And he's, hey Jimmy, we talked. Hey, how you doing? Blah 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 blah. For a while, and then I didn't see him no more until I went to do the deal with Swagger. But he put my name in the hat for taking the tombstone from Kane, Papa Swagger. Some lady called me, a secretary from WWE, and she asked me about it. Said, your name's been brought up for the tombstone. So I ended up going up there and walking out to the ring with Jack Swagger, his dad. We told a big fat lie about how we was fishing and stuff when he was somewhere else. So when I ended up taking the choke slam, my boy ran out on me. He left me.
I guess the only communication you have with Swagger probably would have been that day.
Yes, that was the first time I met him. We went out and did an interview profile. We was fishing and doing this and that. That was his excuse for the angle that they worked, why he wasn't in a certain place at a certain time. He was with his dad fishing, and he had the proof to show it. So he was showing that, and then I went to the ring with him, and him and Kane got in an argument, and he slid out of the ring, and I got caught for the choke slam and the tombstone.
Now, I guess they flew you in for that then, and you probably would have got a pretty good payday because that was a big role for that show.
Yes. Actually, my first trip I drove, because I lived in Knoxville. It was in Lexington, Kentucky, which is only a couple hundred miles away. So I just told them I'll drive up there. Took the physical, and then the next night in Louisville, it's when I took the choke slam and the tombstone. And then, but a few weeks later, I came here to Albany with Jack in a wheelchair where I was hurt. I had the thing around my neck, and I got elbowed again, carried out again.
Is there any way fans or promoters could contact you if they want to book you for autograph sessions or anything as things start to open back up? Because you don't strike me as a guy that has social media.
No, I don't have a Facebook page, and I don't do anything on the internet really, which I should. I've been missing the boat with that, but it just never been a high-tech internet type of guy. But yeah, there's ways to get a hold of me. I got a telephone number down in Knoxville.
Very good. And as far as a lot of people have commented during this, and I commented before we started, you've aged very well. You look very similar to WCW in the mid-90s. Any secrets?
Well, I appreciate that. I've lost a lot of weight from what I was at WCW. Of course, I'm quite a bit older, but yeah, I've been blessed. I feel like that every day that I wake up, I'm blessed. I've had some issues, physical issues. I was AFib had surgery, heart surgery for atrial fibrillation, got high blood pressure and some things I have to be treated for. But I'm still here kicking, and I do some autograph signings and picture taking deals like this one from time to time whenever it's available.
Are you retired from whatever your shoot job was after wrestling now, or do you still work a regular job?
I'm retired. I stay busy. I got plenty of things to keep me busy back in Tennessee. My son just bought a house down there, and me and his mother stayed last year all year fixing his house up for him and helping him get squared away with it. Then her mother, my wife's mother, she's 92 years old, so we do a lot to help her out, keep her lined up. Her house and stuff has to have things done to it, so we've learned a lot about fixing things on houses and mowing yards and stuff. What we don't know how to fix, we get a hold of Google, and they help us out a lot.
Of course. Did you wrestle over in Japan much in your career?
I did in 1971. I went over there for Moto. I was telling these guys about that trip. Terry Funk, Bruno San Martino was on the first half of it. Him and Don DiNucci, and then Dory Funk, Terry Funk came in the second half of the tour. Had a lot of good boys. Dick Steinborn, Dick Murdoch, was some good boys on that trip. That's the only time that I went for a regular promotion. The next two times I went for the military. Promoter out of Charlotte took me and the Rock and Roll Express, the Bushwhackers, and a bunch of guys on a tour for the military. We went to Yokohama, Japan, big naval base there. Wrestled, had a big crowd there. And then another trip, the second trip, we wrestled in at an air base in northern Japan. I can't remember the name of that base. But yeah, I've been to Japan about 3 different times.
Very interesting. What was the place that you liked wrestling at the least? Did you ever go on any of these Middle Eastern trips that always seem to have horror stories, or Africa trips, or did you avoid those?
Never made any to Africa, but we did go to Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. We actually worked at a base in Saudi Arabia with Osama bin Laden's hometown. And when we got there, the military guys that was taking care of us there said, if you go off the base and go uptown, keep a low profile. Well, I told them, I said, I'm not going anywhere. You got everything I need right here on this base. Being this Osama bin Laden's hometown, I'll stay right here, because they told us after we got there that the desert rats is probably shooting at us when we flew over to land. They can't really do any damage because they're just shooting with homemade rifles or whatever they had. They couldn't really get up that high to do any damage, but was known that we wasn't liked.
I hope that you got extra pay for the danger of going over there.
No extra pay, but that's why I didn't go off the base. I stayed right there.
Now, who would your favorite promoter or company have been to work for over the years?
I was telling these guys about Eddie Graham. I enjoyed working with Eddie. I thought Eddie was a great motivator. He'd get me fired up. I don't know how he was for the other guys, but I thought he was fantastic. He knew the business from beginning to the end, thick and thin. He had great finishes. He could tell you, every step to make. He gave me a finish one time in West Palm Beach against Don Carson, and I made it a goal. I was so fired up that I'd do every step that he told me to do. I got a hold of Don out there in the ring, and Don was saying, "That gum Eddie's got you all fired up, don't he, boy?" Yeah, he does. We ended up having a good match.
Now, since you were so successful as a heel, for the wrestlers that watch these interviews I do you have any tips on being a successful heel for the wrestlers out there?
I learned a lot from Jerry Lawler. Watching him when he first come to Alabama and worked for me and my dad down there. The man was fantastic. He just a cocky, arrogant, good-looking heel, and I thought that was the way to go, man. Just be that cocky, arrogant type of heel, and it seemed to work out okay.
Did you ever have any contact with Macho Man? I guess he would have been in WCW, but you would have known him maybe from Tennessee a little bit too.
Yeah, I knew him at WCW. I had a match with him on TV there, and then Randy came to Knoxville. And we had that split that I was telling you about with Orton and Roop and Garvin and all those guys split off. After they broke off from Ron, Savage came in and was on their team. And Randy looked great, a hell of a worker. And I know him and Orton, they had a fight that fought out into the crowd out at a baseball field. And they fought way back there in the left field. They had a good fight. And Randy did well, went a long ways in this business.
You always hear stories that he liked to plan matches out. When you guys had your WCW match, did he try and plan a lot of it out beforehand, or were you just calling it on the fly in the ring?
The elbow, that was the finish.
Okay, so he kept it. He trusted you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So he trusted you, and you just knew the finish, and you went out there and did it.
Yeah, he gave me the elbow, and he laid it in. I knew it was there. So I trusted him with the elbow because he come off the top rope. But I'd seen him do it before, and I knew that he knew how to do it. Of course, you're going to feel it.
Yeah. Did you ever get in there with Hulk Hogan during your time in WCW?
I did. It was a strange situation. They needed a tag match with Hogan. I was in a outfit like the assassin. I was covered with an assassin type outfit and the mask, so nobody would knew who I was. I was just another one of the mass wrestlers, but it was me.
Interesting. So that would have been on one of the television shows.
Yeah, only lasted about 3 minutes. Tag team match.
How did you find he treated you in the back? I understand he was pretty nice overall. He probably didn't see you as competition, so I'm going to guess it probably was pretty good between you and him.
And who's that?
With you and Hogan, did you guys get along in the back?
Yeah. What wasn't around him a lot, but we did. Hogan, one of his first matches was in Dothan, Alabama. Louis Tillett, I think, had something to do with him coming to Dothan and working a match with, I think it was with Andre. And they had a sellout. So he knew that I was involved with the promotion end of it with my two cousins.
So when you saw him back in those days, did you knew he was going to be something special, or did you think it was just going to be another big guy that wasn't really going to go anywhere?
I knew he was a big guy that looked great, but he had some learning to do, and I wasn't sure if he would go very far with it. But to my surprise, the man was box office, brother. He's money in the bank. Once he got up there with Vince, he was it.
Did you know New Jack at all from your time in Smoky Mountain?
No, I missed New Jack. I did meet New Jack at one show or two shows there over the years, but never did really work with him that much or that long. But I knew he was in the Smoky Mountain thing there for a while after I was gone.
Okay.
And there was New Jack. You know, there was a lot of people afraid of New Jack. They didn't know what you was going to get from New Jack.
There's a fan that wants to know, how did WCW change for you when the NWO came in? Was there much change for you as a worker, or was it just you're showing up, doing your job, nothing much is different?
You know, when Hogan and Savage and who else? There were several guys came in from New York about that time.
Hall and Nash.
Yeah, Hall and Nash. And so they started probably putting a lot of emphasis on those guys because they were big money too from New York, you know. So it was only natural for them to spotlight them in a lot of ways. So Bunkhouse was just, you know, kind of one of the ordinary guys from there on. So, but they didn't have anything to do with me finishing up there.
Right. That was just the end of your contract.
Time up, yeah.
And you know what? Speaking of finishing up, Hannibal,
Oh God.
okay?
What did you do to that poor woman that was being helped out?
Kayfabe, brother, kayfabe. But to answer that question, I just got a call, okay? Apparently, SWE has a little extra money in their budget, okay? And you know what? They just called up the good captain, okay? So, Captain.
Oh, are you going to do their podcast for them now?
I may have to. Me and that person that walked by may run the new podcast, okay? But don't forget it, Hannibal, okay? That's
I
it.
understand he's going to demonstrate a move on you.
Oh, you wish.
This belt. You seen this belt?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think the fans want to see that. I think the fans want to see that.
They all